Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome everyone to yet another episode of FinTech Pioneers. At FinTech Pioneer, we bring the real who's who of the FinTech world who are shaping the future of FinTech industry, not just in the region, but globally. Today, we have a very prominent personality, Sitash, who is the CEO and founder of Stockal, who's going to share with us his journey and his views on what is the future of investment and how is FinTech shaping that up. On that, Sitash, welcome to the show, FinTech Pioneers.
Hi, Bhavin. Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me, and nice to meet you. Nice to talk to you. Looking forward to the discussion. Hi, everyone who's watching. Thank you so much. And just to add, I have a co-founder, so we call ourselves co-founders and co-CEOs. As it happens in fintech, you need more hands than one to actually build something of meaning many times.
Of course. So, Sitash, why don't we start with about your own background, how you ended up here? Are you actually from a tech industry? Are you from a consulting? Are you from a financial services? What got you in the entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, no, thanks. So, pretty much, the one of the standard templates that has emerged in India. I grew up in India, and a typical engineer, MBA. Worked in software for a while. I started out, in fact, as a software engineer in a fintech environment back when fintech was not yet a coined term. It was still tech for financial services. So I was working for a company called Pero Systems. We were building a clearinghouse application for 14 large UK-based banks in those days. This is 2004, 5, 6 timeframe. But I realized that I wasn't very good at it. I not at the writing code piece at least, and I wasn't enjoying it as much as I sort of would have wanted to enjoy the career as such. So I moved on from there into management. So I got an MBA and then went back to be industry for a while. I actually wanted to be an entrepreneur more than anything else, but typically a management education gives you a loan that you have to repay. So I had to sort of go back to the industry. This time I worked with a company called Cognizant. So again, in the area of technology. So I've been very close to technology. But with Cognizant, I moved to the consulting side. They had just started something called Cognizant Business Consulting, CVC. So it got me exposed to the business side of things. I worked with brands on the marketing side, like a bridge between tech and marketing for about 2 years, working largely with retail brands in the US, Asia, etc. And then I started my first company in 2009. This was a marketplace for B2B services, basically. Ran that for about 5 years until 2014-15 timeframe. Came out of it in 2015. 14, and then spent about a year figuring out what next to do, as it happens between ventures. I didn't want to go back to the industry. I wanted to restart and build something else. And I had met my co-founder when I was running Jade Magnet, which was my previous startup. And we sort of gelled well, Vinay and I, we gelled well, and we figured that let's do the next one together. And he came from a financial services background as well, so from a hedge fund background. To a certain extent, and we ended up thinking of various ideas again in the fintech space. And by then, fintech had become fintech. The word had been coined, and we sort of thought our skill sets complemented each other. I was gung ho about crowdsourcing, wisdom of the crowds, analyzing social chatter and those kind of things for insights. And he obviously came from a background where he felt a lot of this could be applied to financial services, investing, and so on. And that was really the first version of Stockal that we had thought of,
Nice.
where you use a wisdom of the crowd as an investing insight tool, basically.
Super. So between two of you, you cover all the three: financial services, consulting, and tech, which is great. That's a good combination. Great. Yes. But Sitash, tell us more about Stockal. What is Stockal? Yeah. Right. And tell our viewers how actually Stockal journey has been so far and what unique problem does it solve, and what kind of traction you're getting in the market today.
Certainly. So in terms of what we do today, the platform that we are building is a borderless investing platform. In fact, legally, the organization is called Borderless Investing Inc. What we believe is that as the world progresses, people have been exposed to all kinds of international products, companies, brands, services, experiences. and also international expenses, be it for education, be it for immigration, be it for just travel and everything else. But when it comes to investing and the saving of money, uh, at least from an emerging market perspective, and even from a EMEA perspective, MENA perspective, uh, investing overseas is either very expensive or very exclusive, so available only to a certain category of investors, certain HNI category of investors, or it is nearly impossible regulatorily,
Correct.
logistically. It's extremely difficult. Case in point, country like India, where we are otherwise based out of. It's a big market for us, and I grew up there. Uh, Investing from India into, let's say, the US market, investing in companies like Google and Apple, sitting in Bangalore, the tech capital of the country in many ways, has been extremely difficult. Sending money out for the purpose of investing used to be an offline process. It still is. You have to, like, you literally walk into a branch if you want to send money out, for investing. Opening an overseas investing account, a brokerage account with a broker in the US or the UK or in Singapore or
Yep.
wherever, very difficult. Typically, with a big broker like Charles Schwab, it would take 3 weeks to open an account, offline paperwork, courier your documents, and so on. Then interactive brokers and some others came up. It still has been a 2-3 day process to just to open an account, and then you take 5-6 days to send money over. People don't have that kind of patience these days, and investors are getting younger and younger by the day, and they're in millions of millions. But spending 7 to 10 days just to set yourself up is in no way the world can be in some time. So we thought, if we solve for this logistics kind of problem, and we do this across geographies, because the entire emerging market area is like this.
Right.
Either there are underdeveloped markets, or there are capital controls, or so therefore regulatory and compliance issues. We felt if we could solve for those things, then we would end up unlocking a very large opportunity. So that's what
Awesome.
Stockal does.
So, what has been the traction so far?
Yeah,
What
so
has
well,
been the market reception so far?
I would say pretty encouraging. From an India perspective, we started with India, and then now we are in MENA. We are going into Southeast Asia, China, in the next quarter. Uh, in India, we saw very good traction. We've set this up like a B2B2C platform, which means we work with some of the largest banks, brokers, wealth management companies, fintechs, etc., to as a distribution channel. So we've created this whole logistics product, everything together on one platform, and then we give this platform. So, for example, in India, we work with HDFC, which is probably India's largest private sector bank, and their brokerage firm as one of our largest distributors. Then we have Motilal Oswal, we have IIFL. Pretty much most of the top 10-15 Indian brokers and many of the banks use Stockal to distribute Stockal as a platform to their customers, so that they can diversify their investments from just being in India to actually being global.
An international portfolio.
International. And in the last 20 months or so, we've done about $700 million worth of transactions on the platform. So, people are taking to it, people are actually using it, we have all kinds of trends emerging in terms of Indians investing in the US markets, looking at all kinds of scenarios, investing in, tech IPOs, investing in, GameStops and AMCs of the world as well, the meme stock trend, everything that in a way was missing from the Indian discussion when it came to investing has now become at least a major part of that discussion as well. And so very encouraging signs. In the Middle East as well, we now, I think about 10-15% of our assets and transactions actually come from the Middle East. We've done some strong partnerships in UAE, in Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, etc. We're looking at Saudi and Qatar and Egypt for the next this quarter, actually. So pretty strong traction in the Middle East also, but very encouraging early days.
Awesome. And how do you see the competition in this? Because obviously, number of companies have come up, right? We have like of Stashaway, which has just come here from Singapore. We have somebody like Equity, which is from Jordan, operating quite strongly across the region. So there are a number of these competitive firms which have come in the same area. Many of them even provide CFD, which is a big traction. So how do you see that competition shaping up?
Yeah. No, I think competition is always a good sign. It is a sign of a growing market. So it's a market which is expanding. We are not fighting for the same pie. The pie is also expanding. That's one. Other thing, of course, is one has to differentiate from the competition in some way or the other to actually show value as more perceived value and real value rather than just apparent value. And the way we've taken ourselves to market is different from the way a Stashaway or a Sarva or some of the others are. And there was competition earlier as well. I mean, there was Interactive, there was Saxo, so there were incumbents. What we've done different from competition per se is that we are more B2B2C. So we've gone to local brokers, local banks, local wealth management firms, and we've said, look, you can have your own Stashaway. Stockal will give you your own environment. So you are now tech enabled. Think of it as Robinhood as a service, Stashaway as a service, Wealthfront as a service, right? So you in Stashaway or any new fintech is in a way a competitor to the incumbent market as well.
So in that case, you position yourself as a SaaS company or as a financial services organization regulated, providing a financial service.
Yeah, so we are a very, I would say, a very strong fintech. We try to really live up to the word. We are regulated as well, so we are getting just about getting a license under DFSA as we speak. Hopefully this month. So we are extremely regulated. In India, in the US, everywhere we have regulated entities, or we have entities which are getting regulated as we speak. So extremely regulated. The DNA is still that of technology. So in every sense of the word, we are a tech company. So we try to solve it completely. So instead of becoming a SaaS vendor to a wealth management firm or a bank, we say, look, we are your partner. So we are regulated to do this on our own also. Completely end to end, but we would rather work with you so that you already have a captive audience. Why don't we get to that captive audience faster and together? And we're not coming to you with a half-baked solution or with just a technology solution. So think of us as a partner which can execute from end to end, all the way from becoming your tech digitization enabler all the way to execution as well. Put it all together. The key is to get client attention, key is to get customer attention in this, and that is something that the incumbents already have. So we say, you can just use the platform as a product that you can distribute.
So Sitash, let's talk more about the future of the retail of investments itself, right? You're mainly into retail investments, and lot of innovation in this space in last few years has been more about giving the ability to end user as an access to invest in multiple products, multiple markets. At the same time, the ease with which it could get executed, right? The lesser complication, the better UX, UI.
Absolutely.
But what is the future 10 years down the line? Is this the future of investment that anybody can pick up the phone, click a button and invest? But how do you mature this market beyond just accessibility and the user experience?
Absolutely. I think accessibility is a very important word, mainly because it's not just about accessibility using technology. It is also accessibility in a manner that it reduces exclusivity from investing products.
Okay.
So one of the problems that we've sort of identified is that some very good investing opportunities and perceivably high quality investment opportunities are typically also exclusive. They are available only to, say, ultra HNIs. They're available only to certain high net worth class of investors or certain investors in certain geographies. Be it some kind of structured notes, be it some kind of real estate, be it some kind of exclusivity, digital wine. It could be any of these things, right? Art. A lot of these opportunities are exclusive in nature, either because they're geographically exclusive or because they're ticket size exclusive. I think one thing that has to change over the next, say, 5-10 years, like you're saying, and seems to be changing anyway, but I think this will mature over the next 10 years, is that this exclusivity will go away. Or rather, my ticket size of investment and where I live, whatever my domicile is, it will not dictate what I can invest in. So even with a, let's say $100 or $200 or $500, I will be able to invest in a high quality hedge fund quality managed investment asset. Even living in India or Indonesia or Malaysia or Kuwait or Bahrain or Qatar or Dubai, I will be able to access the same kind of quality of investment in US or
Right.
Japan or India or wherever it might be, or Vietnam.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's where we are going.
So, Sitash, this also brings another challenge that people would have ability to invest anywhere in any asset class in any market, right? However, all the investments come with a certain level of risk profile.
Absolutely.
How do we actually ensure that people are making a genuine informed decision and it's not getting into a herd mentality? Because that's what generally happens. One guy buys Bitcoin, everyone wants to buy Bitcoin.
Yes.
How many people actually understand Bitcoin? It's a separate story, right? And it's the same that we have seen in the real estate market, in most of the, even stock market. So as we give people ability, you gave example of art, it's fantastic, or a structured product. Yes, you can probably, unitize it, and which then allows anybody who wants to probably put 1,000 in a structured note versus 100,000 or $1 million is able to do it. But how do you explain the risk associated with a structured note to a retail investor, especially when we are talking emerging economies, right? Where the education itself do not necessarily teach you the sophistication of a developed economy stock market and the risk associated with it.
Absolutely. I think great area to discuss. I think so. I look at this as a two-step problem. First step really is, and where we are right now, and we don't have all the answers right now also, to be honest. I think the first step is to take the exclusivity away, build infrastructure and logistics, so that a retail investor who's, let's say less sophisticated today, doesn't feel that I don't have the ability to invest in that. Now, whether I will or will not is the next level of discussion. It comes down to my maturity and understanding and research and ability. But whether I can or cannot is the first problem to solve. Right? So from an accessibility perspective, the idea is to first solve for the cannot issue. Look, you can do it. Now, whether you do it or not is a very big issue and a very big area. But once we've done the can or cannot is when we should address the will or will not, area. To that extent, I think the other thing that's happened is that education and information has also become a little more available. It's easier to educate today. So,
and Sitash, I'll tell you where I'm going with this, right? The key concern that we have seen across geography with regulators, when actually the client disputes come up, right? And say with a brokerage firm or with an investment firm, is always about suitability, about client saying, I did not understand this product enough or I wasn't explained enough. So treating customers fairly, customer suitability becomes important. And sometimes I do wonder, right, when I see something like Interactive Broker or Saxo Bank asking just 3 simple questions. Have you invested in stock before? Have you invested in structured product before? Are they enough to measure the suitability of a particular investor vis-a-vis the exposures that they are about to take? And then, of course, there is a leverage that comes along with it.
Yeah. No, I think in some of this, we tend to fall back on regulation as well. And in some ways, regulation is healthy. For example, offering leverage to pure retail investors who do not have the level of sophistication in your profiling, and you've understood this. It's a bad practice, honestly speaking. Right? So incentivizing behavior which may be detrimental to the investor's health does not sort of do well for the business in the long term anyway. So I think it's more about being conscious of specific areas, because these are nuances, and overselling, mis-selling, incentive based behavioral targeting of investors. I think while it's become commonplace in technology, and it's something that helps many times, but if it is done consciously, I think it can be done right and still be beneficial to especially to platforms like us. That's one way that we are looking at it. Second is that we think of ourselves, Stockal, as an infrastructure play. So we'll build the infrastructure. Then we'll provide products on the infrastructure that we are building. So which means we will solve for regulation, compliance, KYC, AML, policy, all of that digitally, and everything will be automated. That's the way we are building it. Then on the infrastructure made available, we bring products. When we
Correct.
bring products, we curate. So we don't just blindly put products on the platform. So there is a degree of curation that we try to do so that we are doing the right thing for the investor consciously. We're also listening to the investor before we bring the product. So we say, what do you want? What is it that there is demand for? What is this new shiny new object investing asset class which has come up, and does it make sense to the audience that we have? So we figure those things out.
So Sitash, focus more on that also, because I was about to ask you that as next. Number of asset classes, not just asset within the class, but the asset class itself are growing rapidly. And so how does a company or a fintech like yours adapt to this great mass of asset classes which are rushing, and they are wonders of the month and may not even last beyond a few months? How do you cater to something like this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think two things to do. One is to have the architected ability in the platform to accept asset classes in a plug and play manner. I think that's first. From an infrastructure perspective, that's key, because like you're saying, a good asset class sometimes doesn't last a long time. So that is first, to be again the can I have this asset class? That's the first problem to solve. So for that, we have architected ourselves in a manner that any new asset can be onboarded on the platform in 4 to 6 weeks maximum. So there are cases where we are able to add new investment options within a week or within 3-4 days. But if it's a whole new asset class, let's say 4 to 6 weeks to add anything to the platform. That's first. Second, and very important, like you said, and previously also you were saying, important to have the ability to know whether this asset class and this asset actually works for the investor or not. So that is the curation. So there has to be expertise involved in the back end. From a financial knowledge perspective, there has to be expertise involved in the technology to sort of make sure that the platform actually is scalable enough to accept new asset classes faster. I think both these abilities we've sort of built to a certain extent, and we continue to build in the company.
Awesome. But tell me more about the tech itself then, right? Lot of innovative technologies, emerging technologies, lot of discussion happening on how the future of the transactions would work. So where do you see the new emerging technologies coming in your area? Is it AI? Is it AML? Is this ML? It's going to be blockchain coming to you? What all is coming in your sector, which is likely going to significantly change the way you operate today?
I think a combination of what you just said. I think, blockchain is obviously something that you can't ignore. In fact, crypto or no crypto, blockchain adds a lot of value.
Correct.
Right. So, and blockchain goes a very long way in democratizing investing assets. We were talking about tokenization or unitization of, large ticket size investments. Blockchain is the way to do it. Blockchain itself is now pretty, I would say, as far as tech goes, it's not a new technology anymore. There are versions and versions of it,
absolutely,
of it which have come up, and I think in a lot of ways, Web3 and DeFi, etc., will sort of lead the next 3-4 years of the tech wave when it comes to just tokenization technology and stuff like that. So I think that's one big area. AI/ML has a different role to play. I think AI/ML has a very important role to play when it comes to KYC and AML. I think, for example, we need to do KYC of as many people as possible, which means as many jurisdictions as possible need to be covered by Stockal for Stockal's platform to remain truly borderless. The entire MENA region, every country has a different, let's say, identity documentation. Outside of MENA as well, India has something else as an identity document, Indonesia has something else, China has something else, etc., etc. So every place has a different ID. Every place has a different kind of address document as well. And the only way to solve for this at scale is to actually smartly use AI.
So are you using that today, or you intend to develop or use it in the future?
In some partnerships that we have done, we are actually using it for certain KYCs now. For example, on Stockal, you can actually open an international investing account straight through in like 5 minutes on an app.
Awesome.
including your active liveness check, etc., on a
Yeah.
mobile for your liveness verification, your identity proof, and everything. Everybody else, a lot of them actually take 2 days. Like international brokers take 2 days to onboard a new customer. We only take 10 minutes to do that. So we've already started using that. And I think that's similarly AML as well, right? So every country has a different AML kind of problem that you're addressing, given the local capital control. So I think there also at scale, if we use AI, I think that's where a solution lies for that.
Awesome. And Sitash, conscious of the time, I have one last question for you. What will be your message to all the policy makers, right? You have seen fintech growing, it's reaching emerging economies. We are talking about, financial inclusion to financial security, everything today. And a lot of that is developing. But at the same time, new regulations are coming in the fintech world. So what will be your key message to all the policymakers on what needs to happen to build our future with fintech?
Certainly, I think regulators play a more important role today than ever, because fintech, we've come to realize, is not going to escape regulation one way or the other, because of the far-reaching impact of any new concept within fintech. It can't remain unregulated for a very long time. And also, a lot of good things are emerging in fintech. Their impact will be limited unless the regulators bless it. So I think two things that regulators probably need to do going forward more of. One is just agility, I think, right? So the right people, we need to get involved in the regulation for agility to happen. The world has changed. The world changes every 1 year now. So I think regulators can't think of reacting to something in 4 or 5 years. There's a constant evolution in regulation that is required, alongside the evolution in assets and investing options and so on. So I think being on your toes is very important. Second, I think more and more of the newer investing options, concepts within investing, financial services in general, but investing in particular, the newer aspects of financial services will be borderless in nature. The impact will not be only on your country. The impact will be multi-country from the start, because that's just how the world has become. So I think there needs to be probably a little more regulatory synchronization, between policymakers of different regulatory regimes. That is something we don't see at all, honestly speaking. Everybody tends to decide on their own. Everybody obviously has to protect local interests also, which makes sense. But I think there is a meaningful lack of coordination between regulatory policies from country to country, or from one regulatory regime to another. I don't think 2-3 years down the line that approach can survive. I think regulation cannot be in silos anymore. There has to be better coordination.
Look, I must say, I loved the way you term this, because, most of the times when we talk about this topic at various places, people talk about cross-border transactions, cross-border payments, cross-border ease of transaction. Cross-border is generally the word which is used. And I like the way you guys have turned it around and you are calling it borderless. Right. So it is more about how to make it borderless transaction, that your experience is seamless. So it's a very good way of thinking. So you are not fighting the barrier, but you are actually laying down the vision. And that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Sitash, it was a pleasure talking to you. And I wish you and Stockal all the best. And I think there's a huge market in the emerging economies for you to capture. So I'm wishing you the best, and hopefully we'll see Stockal doing amazing stuff in the market and helping a number of people take an informed decision to invest their wealth.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bhavin. Great. It was great talking to you, and lovely to meet you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.